Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. David Rhodes. I am the Director of Hybrid and Emerging Pedagogy at Vanguard University in Costa Mesa, California. And I want to present a simpler approach to building HyFlex courses, or a simpler approach to training faculty on how to build HyFlex courses. I want to start out with this question. Is this true for you? Many professors, for good reason, are intimidated by the prospect of designing and teaching a HyFlex course that requires them to meet the same learning objectives with 3 different sets of students at the same time. Live on campus, live online, and asynchronous, all at the same time. I know that is true for many professors. So, also, is this true for you? Faculty frustration extends to the time necessary to learn, design, and build these types of courses in an efficient and effective way that also compensates them for additional time on top of their normal teaching load. I know that faculty that I've dealt with at my university and other universities I consult with basically say, I'm not compensated, I don't have enough time. A lot of times they're off contract. So these are definitely true things that I've heard from faculty, and that are most likely true for you as well. I have a solution. It is not the solution, but it is a solution. And the solution that we have taken at Vanguard University is to build all courses as an 8-module HyFlex course that gives students 2 attendance choices, asynchronous or in person, or asynchronous and Zoom or whatever video conferencing software that you have. So while it's still a challenge to build and teach, this two-choice HyFlex approach is much more manageable for faculty, and it's easily adapted to fit the delivery type and course length need that a particular program, term, or teaching professor needs. So it can expand and contract from 8 weeks to 16 weeks or down to 4, whatever the case may be, according to need. And I'll show you a kind of example of that here in a second. This model is based on a flipped version of Bloom's taxonomy. I know you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. You'll have some work that you do before class, that's usually reading and watching, which would fall under the understand and remember section of Bloom's taxonomy. So that's the focus of the pre-class work. The other focus of in-class work is usually analyzing and applying, hashing those kind of things out, applying those things in groups, whatever the case may be, whether it be Zoom or in person. And then you have the focus of post-class work that usually is in the create and evaluate section of Bloom's. It's a lot easier to build a HyFlex class, I believe, in this flip model, and better for the students as well. This is a picture. We use Canvas as our LMS, so this is going to be different for your different LMSs. But basically what I've done is design a template for professors to build into. So it can be used as a template. You can pull this content into a live class and adjust it according to need. So this module, insert dates here, Monday to Sunday. We make it a little bit easier, so every single class starts on a Monday, ends on a Sunday. And you can put due dates and due times and things within your assignments that could go along with that. The reason that I have complete before live session, understand and remember, and complete first, understand and remember, you can turn things on and off. You can publish and unpublish things. I just put that in the template, so depending if you teach this class as a 100% asynchronous online class, it can work like that. If you teach it as an in-person class or a Zoom synchronous session or a synchronous online class, you can just click this. So basically publish all of those that are very similar. So it's before the live session, during the live session, or instead of, and then complete after the live session, or complete third if you want to turn it into an asynchronous online class. So the course would have to be contracted and built once, and this is one of the reasons that we've gone after that as far as efficiency is concerned. We want to make sure that we build a course and build it as universal as possible so it can meet the needs of multiple different modalities. So teaching professors could then easily adapt it to fit their needs. They can turn it into an asynchronous online class, a synchronous online, hybrid. TUG is traditional undergrad. For those of you who have traditional undergrad programs or face-to-face programs, HyFlex virtual. In our case, it's called FlexVU virtual or FlexVU campus. You can expand and contract it to an 8 or 16 week. And it would fit within a multitude of programs, and it could fit with a multitude of levels as well. And the cool part about building it this way is just because you build it as a HyFlex class does not mean you have to teach it as a HyFlex class. Of course, if you advertise it as a HyFlex class, you need to give them that 100% flexibility from week to week, session to session. But if you just build it with all that flexibility in, a professor can then go, okay, you know what, I'm going to give them some flexibility in the middle of the class, not at the beginning of the class, not at the end of the class, and that those that content, that those activities are already there and ready for students to take. So it basically functions as a 100% online, asynchronous online course, but also then you have your in-person or your synchronous options for students to choose from as well. So there are 5 factors that drive this approach. Budget. Budget is huge for the majority of schools. I mean, I don't think there is a school out there that would say that budget is not a concern. You're always wanting to cut costs, but the cost of equipping classrooms with the technology necessary to successfully facilitate simultaneous in-person and virtual sessions is in many cases cost prohibitive. The cost of building courses in multiple modalities, along with equipping faculty with the initial and ongoing training and technical support necessary for the 3-option HyFlex, can also be cost prohibitive. So our institution, we started out with this 2-choice HyFlex, and if they want to add the 3rd choice later, as they become really comfortable with the 2 choices, they can do that. But what we wanted to avoid is just putting a bunch of money in a lot of different classrooms, and then professors don't have enough time to learn the technology, you don't have enough people to train them, you don't have enough people to support that, and a lot of things come into play with this budget concern. And all of those trainings and setting up classes all are impacted by budget. Then we have skill set. You have a picture of this guy playing multiple instruments. I don't know if you've ever seen a person like this on the boardwalk or a little downtown street, or whatever the case may be. You're just wondering, like, how are they pulling it all off? How are they playing all these instruments all at one time? So a large percentage of faculty excel at engaging their students in a traditional face-to-face environment. I have a lot of really good professors that do a good job at teaching in that face-to-face. A smaller percentage of those faculty excel at engaging their students in a live virtual environment. And then even smaller percentage of faculty members are able to successfully engage both sets of students. So it does not mean that you cannot, it just means that you may not be able to right away at the very beginning, but you may also choose, as you build this class, not to ever roll into that 3rd option, or that in-person and live synchronous at the exact same time, because your learning objectives are being met in the asynchronous environment, and your learning objectives are being met in the in-person or that synchronous session, those 2 choices. So skill set, and of course that comes along with, you need to increase their skill set, and you need to have time, you need to have compensation, you need to have training and support to do that. Doesn't mean that you do not support that, it just means that it would be more difficult to get professors in to be able to train them on something like that. And then even if you do all the training in the world and all the support in the world, technology, there's a possibility that something's going to go wrong with technology. This model allows you to get as good as you can with it, and then you choose if you would like to add that 3rd option, if you have the support, if you have the training, and so on and so forth. And then we have equity. So while the internet connectivity and speed are relatively consistent on campus in the majority of cases, it's not always the case. It is not necessarily the case for many of our students that are off campus. Many students that do not have consistent access to a computer, tablet, smartphone, consistent high-speed internet connectivity, or a private, quiet location to log into their class. And I know at the K-12 level, trying to get computers to them are a challenge, or getting them hotspots, but it's even more difficult if you're trying to maintain both the technology inside the classroom and then the individual technologies that students have out in their own homes or wherever they're accessing the internet. You have to rely on internet, you have to rely on camera, microphones, a quiet environment. Maybe they have a lot of children, maybe they have a lot of people living within the home with them, can't find a computer or anything. They may have to go to the library. So a lot of times there are things that get in the way of students being able to access in a live environment. That also includes working. If they're working, if they're not healthy, any reason why a student couldn't come to class would get in the way of providing an equitable environment, and not equal. So your experiences from asynchronous to synchronous to in-person, those are not equal experiences, but they are equivalent experiences in that they will meet the same learning outcomes in a different way. And you want to do that in an equitable way as well. And then we come to pedagogy. So many faculty members teach as they were taught, using a traditional combination of in-person lecture, midterm and final exams, So using a flipped approach takes most of the lecture outside the classroom, breaks it up into manageable chunks, and pushes it into the asynchronous online space where students can engage at the time of their choosing. And in-class time is then used to engage in active learning activities that would not, in most cases, be conducive to live virtual engagement or recording and posting for asynchronous students to watch later. So it doesn't mean that you cannot record those sessions and then post them, but a lot of times students are not going to look at that. They have long chunks of time, especially if you're lecturing for long periods of time, which, as research shows, is not the best approach as far as student learning is concerned. So if you were to build it in this way, where you have an asynchronous backbone, you can use this flipped approach, and you can record and use those recordings semester to semester, term to term out into the future, as opposed to relying on the technology within the classroom to record that. You record things beforehand and don't rely on what's happening inside the classroom to record and then put inside of your learning management system. And then we come to assessment. So of all these different factors, we come down to assessment, and that's the last of the 5 factors. So aligning learning outcomes, curriculum and delivery flexibility across programs, traditional professional studies, graduate programs, enables program level learning assessment that accurately compares outcomes with your institution to other like institutions. This approach gives you the ability to reduce assessment redundancy and maximize departmental leader efficiencies. And all that to say is, if you were to create your courses within a similar format like this template from class to class, so let's say if every course had the same template and the same form and function and flow, you would actually, from a student perspective, be able to see continuity, be able to see consistency, but also not just for the student, but for the assessment purposes, for yourself to know, is how I'm teaching, what I'm teaching working? Are students learning? Are they able to retain that knowledge? Or you're actually trying to figure out, in comparison to your end of semester surveys you have for your students, and kind of comparing it, how are students, are they satisfied with the content? But it's hard to compare from one course to the next course if those courses are completely different types of courses. If you build it in one way with that flexibility in there, you'll meet as many students' needs as possible, but you'll also be able to compare from class to class. And not only class to class, but class to class over year, or class to class outside of your institution. As it's mentioned here, you want to be able to judge if your intro to psychology, your intro to sociology, your English 1 and 2, your college algebra, all these classes that are the same across the board at multiple universities, you want to be able to assess and see if you're doing well. So overall, to wrap up, the HyFlex approach can be daunting, can be overwhelming for many professors. So the way that we've approached it, as I presented here, is to give them the ability to build. And in our case, we used a stipend system that we're stipending professors to build when they have time. They go through a coaching session and multiple coaching sessions along the way with me or with somebody else at the institution that coach them through the building of that course. And then we push that course out into what's called Canvas Commons for a repository of courses. And then as a professor pulls that from Commons, they can tweak it to fit their needs, but they don't really tweak the learning objectives. They just more personalize it and add welcome videos and how to navigate these class videos to the courses, and then kind of make it their own. But they're also, we know from course to course, from professor to professor, even if it's the same class, we're going to have the same learning objectives being met. And we find a lot of success in doing it this way. We have maybe 75 classes already built in our repository in Canvas Commons that people can use and tweak and adjust to the type of modality they want to offer their students. And we've had a lot of success in this. Of course, it's a lot of hard work. At the beginning, I've said this is a simpler approach. This is not an easy approach, but it is an easier approach as far as time and cost are concerned.